Welcome to the Business of Tattooing, the podcast that goes beyond the ink to dive deep into the industry, the hustle, and what it really takes to succeed in the world of tattooing. I'm Rob Smead, founder of Electrum Supply, and your guide through the business side of this ever-evolving art form. Each week, we'll break down the latest trends, tackle the challenges artists face, and sit down with industry pros to talk shop, unfiltered and straight to the point. Whether you're an artist, a shop owner, or just someone who loves the craft, this is the podcast built for you. So, sharpen your skills, level up your business, and let's get to work. This is the Business of Tattooing. You were CEO after Tramp, right?
I was general manager of Eternal, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can talk about that a little bit if that's okay when we get
I was the first general manager.
But yeah, we've got Sean Brown on the podcast today. Sean, thanks for joining me here, taking some time out of your crazy busy schedule. I'm sure to carve out a couple hours to sit here and talk with me about the business of tattooing. Exciting as always to talk to you. And for listeners that may not know who you are, because there's probably quite a few, let's start with a little bit of your history. I think you're a 24, 25-ish year veteran in the industry now, artist.
Yeah.
Been involved with Eternal Ink for quite a few years now, ever after PMU pigments. Anything, specific that you want to add to that, feel free. Just give the listeners a little bit of a breakdown about who is Sean Brown.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Rob. Happy to be here, man. So I appreciate you taking some time with me, I've been tattooing since 1999. So, I was a little bit of that kind of cusp of that last generation of harder apprenticeships and steel tubes and cleaning out of the bathroom sink,
Yeah.
So it's a little different. I really started tattooing right before 9/11, and the industry really took a downturn during 9/11. So wasn't sure how it was going to pan out, but here I am still, 25, 26 years later, something like that. So last 15 years, I've had a big focus on nipple areola restorative tattooing. Worked with a couple plastic surgeons, one predominantly in the Austin, Texas area. Super focus on that. I founded Republic Tattoo Supply, which is a van delivery service that started here in Austin and quickly spread into other parts of Texas and then New Mexico. And then I was one of the co-founders of Ever After Pigment, which is a PMU line. Co-founded that with Liz Cook and her husband Ken Cookie, so which is now also part of our group. Shortly after, I kind of partnered up with a different group, and that group went after and partnered with Eternal. And Tramp asked me if I would come and run his company for him as he was ready to kind of step back and take more of a consulting kind of role. So that's kind of the gist of it at a high level.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've known you now for quite a few years, and obviously I've seen a lot of what you're doing in the industry, and I know you have a heavy focus now on product safety, with the Nexus Group. And is that primarily related to tattoo inks in the PMU line, or is that just kind of widespread across the whole entire gambit of the products that Nexus is responsible for?
I primarily focus on the tattoo piece of it. It's more of what I know, I do help, and Nexus has a different division too, a pet grooming division, where they also manufacture products for that. So I do help occasionally on that side, but I'm more focused with the tattoo side and the PMU.
Yeah, I thought it might be interesting. I kind of touched with you on this a little bit last night. And again, anything that you're not comfortable talking about, we can just edit out after the fact or whatever. I'll ask you at the end if there's anything that you don't want included, and we'll just snip it out. But sure. I thought it would be good with all of the, there's a lot of chatter on the back end in the industry about, the corporate influence in the industry. I thought it would be cool to touch a little bit on, going back to our lineage as artists. I'm 30 years in the industry now myself. So, I've been around for quite a few years too. And I've definitely seen the progression from art to industry, before, I think social media had a big influence in explosive growth in the tattoo space. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about, what your perspective is on the growth of the industry, how you've seen it grow. How do you feel like it's been a positive growth? Do you feel like it's been a negative growth? And then I would like to touch, without getting too much into the weeds or too focused on the details, how, we could talk a little bit about the history of Nexus, because I think a lot of people don't know who's really behind Nexus, who started that company, and maybe we could get it a little bit into that and just kind of talk some about the evolution of that and your feelings around that, and maybe
Sure.
dispel some of the paranoia around corporate influence in tattooing.
Yeah, yeah, we definitely talk about some of that. It's as a tattoo artist first, it was a big decision for me, and as it was for all the tattoo artists involved, especially coming from the era that we came from, right? So it's our pirate, you know,
Yeah.
fuck everybody kind of attitude.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a big decision, and to be honest, when I was first approached, I told them to kick rocks more than once, in a lot more articulate way,
Sure.
right? As a tattoo artist, I told them to kiss my ass and hit the road. And then talking to some influential people in the industry that I really admired and looked up to and helped mentor me, they said, "Well, don't you think it's inevitable? Don't you think that we're a victim of our own success, right? We have these TV shows now. The times have changed. When I started tattooing, we're still kind of on the outskirts, right, of society. We weren't really looked at as professionals.
Mm-hmm.
We're looked at as we're deplorable buttheads, right? And now with TV and the actual client being comfortable to walk into a tattoo shop, and people are comfortable with tattoos more so now in today's society, that it's a whole different ball game, whole different field. As a lot of us know as older tattooers, like, it's not just about going around and talking to people in person and getting clients now. I mean, you have to be social media savvy. You have to really kind of keep up with the times and evolve with them. And so it was brought to me like that. It was brought to me as it's inevitable. The question is, what are we going to do about it as an industry? Are we going to fight
Sure.
the change? And even then, so if you look at the history of tattoo supplies and manufacturing, or corporate was already involved in some points. This was right.
Right.
Business, smart business, savvy tattoo artists were already involved, and so at that point, I determined, I made the decision to partner up with them with the intent of at least I could influence the direction they go in. At least I could try to advocate for our industry and keep them where they need to be and allow our industry to grow, right? And that's just my opinion and my perspective on it. I totally get and understand that there's so many different perspectives and opinions around it, and that's all right. I mean, that's what makes this country awesome, man. Is we're allowed to have different opinions, right? So my opinion at the time when I joined was try to be a part of it, and if it's a good group of people, they're going to take our lead as artists. They're going to respect our industry, and they're going to go in the direction that we need to go in order to grow and to keep evolving with the times. So that was my initial thought on it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Nexus was essentially started by Billy, right? And Tat Soul.
Yeah, I don't know all the fine details, but it was a deal that was between Tatzel and Kingpin, and looking at how they could grow together. And so that's initially where it all started.
Yeah, yeah. So I think a lot of the paranoia just really revolves around, fear of the unknown, which is kind of a
Sure,
natural thing. People talk when they don't understand details or
sure,
understand. I don't really have an opinion because I don't really have enough knowledge. I just know I'm not on that same trajectory in my own business. I've
right.
remained an artist-owned company and have a pretty strong focus on that side of things.
Yeah.
Um, but
Which is great. Which is great. And on that note, Nexus is artist owned. I mean, it really is. There's other people involved, but there's a lot of us artists that have ownership in that
right,
group.
right. And that's always been
So,
kind of the struggle for me because I'm like, well, these guys are all the people that I grew up in the trenches with. They're still my
yeah,
friends. You know what I mean? So it's like you kind of like don't really know how to feel about things when you look at things like that, or when you have personal relationships with a lot of the people involved. Like you
Yeah.
mentioned Tramp, for example. I mean, I think Tramp's one of the people I respect most in this whole entire industry. And he's a
Hmm.
great man and he's done so much for this industry. And, you can't fault somebody that gets to the age of retirement and wants a better life for themselves and takes a way out when they have one. So I applaud
Yeah,
him for that.
And Trump was one of the individuals that really influenced my decision and my path, right? And Trump's still involved, by the
Yeah.
way. He isn't fully retired. I don't think he ever will fully retire. To
Yeah, I
be
know.
completely honest with you, I talk to him at least once a week. Sometimes it's once a day, and he's fully involved and influential in what goes on behind the scenes at Eternal.
Yeah.
And he stops in there at least a couple times a week and talks to everybody. So still fully engaged and active with us, which without him, honestly, I don't think would be the same.
True, true. Yeah, I mean, he built that company from the ground up, so
Yeah.
he understands it better than anybody. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of a perfect segue into natural flow of things in relation to what you're doing today, what you've been involved in for so many years now, which is really safety and the manufacturing aspects of products in the industry. And you've been on the forefront out in Capitol Hill. You were there when CTS was trying to get off the ground. You've been involved in several other attempts at trying to bring manufacturers together to work together to create a safe space for manufacturing products in the industry and ensuring that we are complying and trying to work with regulators that are out there trying to set rules in place for us to follow. Um, I think it's key that we continue to work together, and I think that's been a real struggle for us on the back end of the business side of things, trying to find ways to bridge those gaps between us because historically it's been a very challenging process to set personal feelings and egos aside and not be paranoid about somebody else's business encroaching on yours and being comfortable talking about some of the sensitive aspects of business in order to accomplish the greater good for all of us. And I know you've been more involved in that maybe than anyone else in the industry at this point in time. So what have I was involved with you guys on CTS back in the early days. I tried to be part of that. Definitely saw the challenges there. But let's talk. We just came off the World Congress of Tattoo Pigments last week.
Yep.
That was a big 3-day conference where you know scientists and industry people and FDA people all converged together in Rome for 3 days and went over all these studies related to tattoo pigments and REACH regulations and the future state of tattooing. And I think now more than ever, it's a real thing that we are faced with and that we have to find ways to work around. I really appreciate your enthusiasm towards the safety of products. But let's talk a little bit about your challenges that you've faced in trying to spearhead some of these initiatives and
Sure.
what challenges do you see in front of us? Where are we at today with things? What do you see as our biggest obstacles?
Yeah. So, I mean, first and foremost, I'm an advocate for our industry, right, in our trade. Excuse me. This trade and the industry gave me everything, right, and I owe everything back to it. I don't know if you remember the first time you tattooed and how much energy you got off of that, right? That just it was amazing, and it continued, and it still continues to this day. Every time I get done with a tattoo, so being an advocate for what has been good to us is a first step. It getting some of the biggest challenges that I see is one that you just talked about, and it's those roadblocks and hurdles of getting us all together and working on the same page. There's so much bad blood between different people and different companies that we really can't see the forest through the trees, right? And it's if we don't get together and start working together, it's just going to be more and more challenging. The government entities are going to continue to force regulations down our throat that don't make sense because they think that we can't regulate ourselves. So we need to figure out a way to come together and to leave all this bad mojo and bad feelings and everything behind for the greater cause, right? For the greater good, and that's our industry. You know, a lot of guys I talk to, a lot of my friends are like, "I'll just tattoo regardless." You know, we'll
Mm-hmm.
go underground. Okay, yeah, you will. It's not going to be like it is though. Trust me. You know, you're not going to be living in that nice house anymore. You're not going to be supporting your family like you were. Um, that's not the direction we want it to go. We
Right.
want the lawmakers to know that we could self-regulate and that we have been self-regulating for decades, and there's no health crisis in tattooing. And the only way to do that is if we all band together and we start getting support of some of the people that we saw at the conference, some of the academics, the scientists, the doctors, start getting their support, and we come in with a unified voice. And when CTS was formed, that was the intent, and it started off really strong. But it just couldn't last through all those challenges that we all knew were there, right? So we definitely need to figure out how to come together. As you saw at the conference, it starts with the ink. That's the easiest thing for these regulators to go after is the tattoo ink, right? Next comes aftercare, and you saw that. And I texted you, I predicted it. I was like, watch, tomorrow's going
Yeah,
to be all about aftercare.
you
Sure
did.
shit, it was all about aftercare. So that's coming next, and I've been saying that for a few years, right? They're going to go after those products first. Uh, a lot of people don't realize in our industry and our trade that they're already working on standards for tattooing as a practice, right? There's groups out there. There's a group called NIHA that has been working on standardized best practice tattooing methods and piercing techniques for quite a few years now.
Right.
You got members of the CDC in there, the NIH. I mean, all these big federal organizations are in there working with industry members to form federal standards
What do
that
you
states
think?
can adopt.
What do you think about the rumor that you hear constantly about? Oh, these are just big corporations paying these people to basically shut the artist-owned ink companies down. So groups like, you know, L'Oreal or whoever, I mean, just whoever the big cosmetic people are, want to come in and take over the industry, and they want to be the ones manufacturing all the products, and they want to take that out of the artist's hands. I hear it all the time. I'm sure you hear it too. What do you think there's any truth to that kind of a rumor? Do you think we have the ability to sustain our businesses long term and continue to manufacture our own products?
I think if we do it the right way, we do. I don't think that and this is just my personal perspective, uh, are companies like that probably watching? Yeah, they're watching. You know, is that what it's about? No. Right now, it's too discombobulated and all over and fragmented. That why would companies like that really want to go after a market that's crazy, right? If we could hold it together and do things the right way, especially with the lawmakers, I think we'll be just fine. For me, what I see more than anything are companies that back laser removal out there more than anything, and those have ties to some of the bigger names like Johnson and Johnson and places like that.
Because
Fact
really,
about go ahead.
sorry, what?
I was going to say there's a a fact that everybody should know. There's a lobbying group called the Environmental Working Group. They're the ones who got us as the tattoo industry involved in MoCRA. We know that for a fact. Okay,
You
so if anybody wants to start digging in conspiracy stuff, look into them.
you mean they're the ones that brought the MoCRA spotlight onto the industry? Is that what you're saying?
They're the ones who brought tattooing into the spotlight of the lawmakers.
Got you. Got you.
Okay,
Okay.
they're the ones who have lobbied extremely hard to get tattooing and manufacturing regulated.
Okay, great. I'm glad you brought that up because that's kind of the history that I wanted to uncover a little bit in the conversation with you. Because a big a big a big reason why I wanted to get you on the podcast was because I feel very strongly that you are more forefront leadership in regards to product safety in the tattoo space, and you've been so heavily involved in it for so many years. You probably have more knowledge than just about anybody that I personally know in relation to the subject. So
Thanks. I don't know how useful it is, but I appreciate that.
I feel like it's really useful. And we text a lot offline with one another, and I'm trying to get to your level. You know what I mean? I'm very focused on product safety in my own company. I want not just for Electrum, but I want Electrum to be one of the forefront companies out here really leading the charge. Like I tell you all the time, like, hey, whatever I can do to help you, it's very important for me to protect the integrity of our craft, because like you said, it's an industry that's given me everything. And I feel like it's only fair that I give everything back to it, that I have the ability to give back to it. I owe it that, I owe all the artists that support our companies that debt, so I don't do this for me. I do this for the industry, and I do this for people like you that put so much into it, because there aren't a whole lot of us out here doing it. I was really shocked to not see more manufacturers at the WCTP conference. I was really shocked when I was going to conventions and talking to other ink manufacturers, and most of them didn't even know that it was happening. And I was like, how can you guys not be keyed in on this stuff? Like, how do you not know what's going on? And it speaks volumes to what you said. Like, we have to find a way to come together, and it is a struggle all the time. It's like, for me, even personally, I want to go out all the time, and I want to help these other ink manufacturers out. But at the same time, I'm like, man, these guys got to have some initiative themselves, like I'm going to do all the work for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a lot of that. I mean, there's a lot of, I've had that struggle too. Am I doing this? Am I doing this for the industry all alone? Is there support? And it's definitely been difficult. I got to say, with your brands, what you built, you are on the forefront, which is great. And just keep it up. Just keep being loud. It's
not entirely. I'm trying to be, but there's still, dude. Let's even just talk about tattoo pigments and safety. And everything that you have to do under MoCRA regulations now. Because you're involved in it just like I am. My safety substantiation packet at Electrum Inc. is ridiculous. The recall processes, the storage and facility. All the test results that you have to keep on file, the way you have to keep track of your lot numbers. And I just, when I'm looking at the process now, I'm like, man, I wish I knew 3 years ago when I decided I wanted to start an ink company that this was what I was going to have to do, because I probably wouldn't have started an ink company.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot, and it's growing too. They're not gonna. I'm right there with you. If I would have seen this federal law coming a little bit more clear, there'd be a different story for me too.
But I only say that to highlight the fact of what you said, that we really need to come together and put our differences aside to really, because how do you eat an elephant, right? You a bite at a time. But if we're all taking bites of that and working on it, we can conquer that elephant a lot faster and really have an impact.
Absolutely, if we can find a way to, we're all passionate. All of us that are artists first, right? We're all passionate about it. Like, we just need to figure out how to harness that passion in a different way, and not, we could be competitors. That's great. That's healthy. We all thrive off of competition, which is good. But we need to get together and focus on our true competitor, which is the lawmakers right now.
And our overall goal collectively should be to make safe products for artists and consumers.
100%, 100%. And there is no health crisis in tattooing. There hasn't been. And what we're seeing in Europe is these new REACH regulations are causing them to have a health crisis.
Right.
And some of these reactions to this new pigment's fucking terrible, man.
True. True.
Months and months to heal because of ingredients that nobody's ever tried and used before. And it reminds me of the movie Minority Report. Something could happen, so we're going to go ahead and regulate just because it can happen.
Well, some things are valid, like I always use lidocaine, and I talk about it a lot. It's like the first thing I go to when I'm talking to people about product safety is lidocaine, because there are some products out there that do need to be scrutinized, like lidocaine. It's a huge one. Like, I just saw in that tattoo group on Facebook last week, people were promoting this lidocaine product that's like 15% lidocaine, and it blows my mind how many people jump on that and like, oh, where do I buy it? Where do I buy it? And I'm like, I'm like,
yeah.
And it's crazy, like the the lack of education in the industry around product safety, and the willingness that artists are uh, the willingness to accept liability that artists are taking on without even realizing they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. And I'm with you on the tattoo ink thing, because like I always also use this example about my grandfather having tattoos on his arm from World War II in the 1940s, and
Sure.
I don't even want to think about what was in the ink they used back in 1940. And we've
No.
advanced so far since then. We've definitely make a way better product today than what was being used in
Not only what they use,
1940.
but how they put it all together.
Right. And my grandfather's arm is still intact. It's still attached to his
Yeah,
body, and he doesn't have cancer or anything because of that tattoo that he got, so.
yeah. It's a whole different ballgame now.
Well, you touched on a little bit the laser tattoo removal, and that was a big part of like the very first part of the conference. They really focused on laser tattoo removal, and there was a lot of discussions around that, which I think really is, if I'm not mistaken, I think really what kind of started putting the spotlight specifically on tattoo pigments, where they were talking about the way tattoo inks, pigments break up in the skin when they're hit by lasers or high temperatures, and how that
Sure.
reacts to the body. And I think that's where a lot of the safety concerns around tattoo pigments kind of originated. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah. That's it. I mean, if you notice in almost every presentation, they've mentioned it. You go to
Yeah,
any other group like the AFTO group, like it's always being brought up. Well, why can't we make it easier to be removed? Well, that's not the fucking point of getting tattooed in the first place. Yeah, we all make mistakes, but why make a product that's easy to remove? I mean, that's kind of, there's been companies that have tried it too.
right, right.
We found that the tattoos, they don't always want them removed, and so they last, they last a much shorter time and they heal like shit.
Yeah. So where are you at now in the process in regards to, what goes on in Sean Brown's life in regards to, Capitol Hill visits? How active are you still in that process?
I'm very active. I meet with people in DC about every other week just to kind of keep a tabs on what's happening, especially with the new administration and all the changes there. So just monitoring basically at this point. Because the new administration is in, things are kind of just, as we all have seen in the media, kind of just crazy right now. But everyone needs to know that this is a year that MoCRA has to be finalized as far as the rules are concerned. So what happens is Congress will draft a bill, right? That bill gets passed in both houses, goes on to the president, gets signed into law. We know that happened with Omnibus, that MoCRA was captured in 2023. Once that's done, the agency involved that's going to be regulating that law has to write rules at some point. Now, in this case, the FDA is the agency that's overseeing MoCRA, right? They oversee cosmetics. So they have to write a rule, and this year is their deadline to write the rule. And they have to have it done by December 27th of this year. Okay. Once that rule is done and approved, that becomes a new law. So the FDA could take pieces of MoCRA and say, we're going to use this piece, we're going to use the safety substantiation. We want everyone to be ISO certified under cosmetic manufacturing, not just general manufacturing. And they have so long to comply with that, right? And so that's what I've kind of been watching for, is when that rule comes out. They're going to first come out in a draft form. At that point, us as the industry and individuals have the ability to comment on that. So that's when we really need to get activated and all of us start sending in comments to the FDA to make sure that this is going to benefit not only us as manufacturers and us as tattoo artists, but also the general public. Because we don't want to see what's happening in Europe happen here, right? We don't want us to actually cause a health problem.
Right.
So it's very important that we really watch the what's happening on the Hill right now. So yeah, that being said, involved heavily on what's going on over there still. It's not a good time to lobby right now until things start actually picking up. But then at that point, probably probably late summer, I'm thinking the manufacturers really need to get together and go pay a visit to some of these congressmen and senators and have a serious talk with them.
Yeah. So how do you, I guess coming out of that conference last week, I got a really strong sense as they were talking around reach regulations and, basically global expansion of safety protocols in the tattoo industry. I got a really strong sense coming out of that really reach is gonna, the European reach regulations are gonna be pretty dominant on a global scale. Do you
Yeah,
feel like?
yeah. So a couple things on that. One, in over 10 years, not much has changed in the way of research. We saw a couple presentations on new research that had just been done the last 2 years that were kind of groundbreaking. But overall, if you think about it, it's such a niche market that there's not a lot of money put into research. Okay, so that's one thing that everyone needs to understand. It hasn't really changed too much in the last 10 to 15 years. That being said, the rest of the world is looking at this very robust law reach regulation, and they're using that already as a platform to base their regulations. I don't know if you ever had any communication with the Australian government last year or the year before, but they reached out to everybody asking their opinion if it's easy to can they meet the reach regulations? Is it reasonable? If not, what's more reasonable? Should we go back to 2008 RESAP? That was a lot looser than this law. What should they do? So the Australians based their regulation off of reach, just a little bit more loosely than any other country. The UK is also looking at reach.
Mhm.
South Korea, they just used a lot of reach. In fact, they made some of their laws more strict than they do in Europe. So the answer is yes, and they definitely are looking. The rest of the world's looking at them, and we know for a fact that the FDA is involved over in Europe. There's the BFR, which is the FDA's equivalent in Germany. They have FDA members from our FDA sitting in on studies and conversations with them, right? Just on a conference we were on last week, there was a minimum of 4 FDA members on the call, monitoring that conference.
Sure.
2 years ago in Vienna, Dr. Linda Katz, who was in charge of all this, actually showed up in person and sat through the conference. I sat next to her almost the whole conference,
Hmm.
and she was there in person. This year, I don't think there's anybody there in person for the FDA, but they were on the phone and they were
Yeah.
monitoring. So we got to be really careful, especially here in the U.S., that our MoCRA law doesn't turn into something like REACH.
Yeah, and I have a pretty I wouldn't call it a fear because I'm not afraid of reach. I mean, we've been trying to develop. I mean, we have developed a reach line of inks with Electrum, but I wouldn't say that we're happy with the way the inks perform. So we haven't released them into uh, distribution yet. We haven't released those for sale. So I do have a fear of reach in regards to the ability to make a quality product that performs like we're used to seeing tattoo inks perform.
Mm-hmm.
I Fear is a strong word. I'm fearful that I won't be able to make a product that like I said meets those standards. But I do find it interesting that they called reach the gold standard uh, of
Yeah,
safety. You know what I mean? So I was like, ugh, that's a pretty strong. You know,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
everybody wants to be the gold standard of safety, and Europe's done a lot of work in regard to reach regulations, and so
Sure,
it's
sure.
easy to copy paste Europe's formula everywhere else, right?
Yeah, yeah. But what we just saw too is everything we predicted. Reach is 4,000 times overstated on their toxicology.
Yeah, yeah. Like we were
I
talking
mean,
about the formaldehyde thing and how, and then you were like, yeah, but it's such a small amount, it doesn't even.
it's less than what comes off your breath when you exhale.
Right.
And Dr. Sharp talked about that during this conference.
But
And
there was such a heavy focus on that in that one presentation. It was all they talked
I
about.
mean, you gotta know. First of all, Reach's method says that 70% of the tattoo ink is absorbed in the bloodstream immediately. Now, let's put on our common sense thinking caps on this. If 70% of the tattoo was absorbed, how much of your tattoo would actually be left invisible? It would be
Right.
like you have road rash instantly, right? Like,
Right.
it doesn't make any fucking sense. So we've been saying it for a long time. It's overstated. Well, what we saw in this conference now is it's proven to be overstated. You know, the metabolism study is groundbreaking, right? There's some groundbreaking studies now, and the formaldehyde, there's the rate it's at is that they set it out is ridiculous. You could have 10 parts per million easily, and it's not harmful, right?
Right.
It's an off gas. It comes from energy being generated. It's not like manufacturers are going and adding formaldehyde like they do to cadavers to
Right.
preserve the ink. That's not what's happening out there. And a lot of people are getting confused on that, especially the media. We don't add formaldehyde. It's an off gas. Just like when you breathe out, you're breathing out some formaldehyde.
Right.
And what is the biggest piece of energy or biggest part of energy that we add to tattoo pigment to today's standards, right? It's sterilization, right? The product's warming up, going through radiation, and it's having energy added to it. So it's going to produce some formaldehyde. It's an off gas. So there's no way really around it. If you want sterile, you're going to have some formaldehyde.
Right.
Now, here's the thing. The longer that seal or that bottle is open, the less formaldehyde it has.
Because it
it's
just releases naturally.
It's getting rid of it. So
Yeah.
Michael Dirks had a very interesting presentation about temperature storage and he did a study on their formaldehyde levels in different temperatures, right? And he showed probably the perfect area to store pigment in to not increase formaldehyde in it, because just sitting at room temperature could increase formaldehyde.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Again, but let's go back to like it being a niche market and not a lot of studies being done. As we are understanding how the skin metabolizes pigment, what level of formaldehyde is safe? That should be the big question, right?
There's no study on that right now.
There's no scientific study. We know as tattoo artists, we've been using the ink for how long?
A long, long time.
Right. So we know retrospectively and historically as artists what's safe and what's not. We know
Sure.
that tattoo didn't heal well, and probably some of the reasons, right? 99% of the time it's a client.
Yeah.
Let's say that in aftercare, right? So, but yeah, it's interesting how much hasn't changed yet. What got presented this year that could be groundbreaking. The real question that I have is, what are we going to do with all that information that's out now?
What do you think we should do? What do you think we should be doing?
Well, I think having that unified voice, right? Number one, how are we going to support, our brothers and sisters over in Europe on this? Because they're going through hell, man. I mean, in Germany, you get arrested for using the wrong ink. So like
Yeah.
somehow, I mean, we need to figure out how to advocate and get these lawmakers and these regulators in Europe to understand how overstated and overreaching the REACH regulation is, because it really is. And until we can do that, I mean, REACH isn't going anywhere, and it will be used as a golden standard, which is absolutely terrible.
So one thing that I've always kind of assumed, I guess is the right word. One thing that I've always assumed in this whole process is that we've seen all these studies that they're doing on that side, right? These overstated studies, right?
Right.
That have basically fueled their case and put us where we are today, right?
Yeah.
But I've also not seen where ink manufacturers or even other manufacturers such as Aftercare or any other products in this space where we've actually gone out and done research and studies on our own. How much of that do we actually have in our database? How much of that do we as manufacturers actually have at our disposal to go to the table with and say, well, here's factual evidence to prove, for example, that the level of formaldehyde in the tattoo ink is so minuscule that it's not an issue. Do we have that kind of stuff today, or do we need to get that kind of stuff?
No, we still need to get it. I mean, manufacturers, but we had that conversation of where we're all at business wise, right? And manufacturers definitely need to get it or see that it's done. I mean, there are ways and there are grants out there. There's colleges and universities that definitely want something to do, so there are ways to get studies done. I know the APT was working on one for a while. I'm not really sure where it's at. It might have stalled out for all I know, but they're looking at a historical retroactive study to show generally how safe tattooing's been in the last 25 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? Things like that, we definitely need in our war chest. I mean, we need to figure out how to work with some of these academics and these scientists and these doctors and get some studies done. 2 years ago when I was at Vienna for the same conference, I talked to one of the authors of that new absorption study, and I said, she kind of presented what they're doing, and I said, you're missing one thing. You don't know how much ink's actually going into the skin. And she goes, yeah, well, we're measuring it before and then after the tattoo. I said, yeah, but are you measuring everything that gets excreted out of the tissue in the days following the tattoo and the post tattoo procedure? As we know, like from having tattoos and tattooing, some of the pigment is coming out with the plasma.
Right. Right.
How do you measure that?
Right.
And I could see, the light bulb kind of turn on her head. She's like, "You're right. We need to figure out a way to measure how much ink's actually coming out after the tattoo as well. Not only how much is going in, but how much is coming out." And we all know too, when you're tattooing, you're wiping, and when you wipe, you're wiping out. We're wiping away most of the pigment. What you leave behind is only where that needle placed it, right?
Right.
So those are big challenges in these studies, but that's what it takes us to really step up to the plate and help out. They need industry experts to help out.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that strongly. The one thing that really was interesting to me in that conference was, and just so people know, for reference point, Reach and MoCRA are heavily focused on ingredients specifically that are in products, and
Right.
whether those ingredients are actually safe or toxic. So that I'm on the AFDO calls. I don't know if you're like much involved with AFDO or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah. I've been involved with AFTO actually since shit, me and Liz are probably the two of the first tattoo artists involved with them. So
Yeah, so I've been on those monthly calls now for maybe about maybe the past 6 months. I guess I really started getting
sure.
involved on the Tattoo Inc. Calls
Yeah.
that they have every month, which again, very interesting. There's only me and uh, uh, I think maybe a representative from World Famous on the call.
Yeah.
A chemist, you know what I mean? That's involved in the ingredient side of things. And for the last couple of weeks, we've been really going through safety substantiation around. We've put together a whole list of ingredients that are in tattoo inks right now. We're going through the safety substantiation part of things right now. We started with water, obviously, because that's the most susceptible ingredient in the tattoo ink that's susceptible to microorganisms and biological contaminants. So we talked a lot last week about what's the water process that you guys use. And it's just really interesting to hear the differences in manufacturing techniques and how people are doing things. For example, I had talked about how we use UV sterilized water in our products,
Right.
and it's basically nothing. It's dead. It's just wet. There's nothing
Right.
in it. It absolutely strips everything from the water. And so another person had said they were talking about using distilled water, and then you had John Mysock on there, who's an FDA guy, and he was
Yeah.
talking about how distilled water is not really good to use, and all the problems with distilled water, and the misconception that when you go buy water like that it's a safe product, because really it's not necessarily a safe product. So
Yeah. John's been just some history on that. John's been on the water kick for the last 15 years in AFTO. But we did a presentation in Houston where we actually tattooed one of the AFTO guys uh, on stage, right? And his big thing is tattoo artists need to use sterile water. You got to use sterile water, and we argued that. I mean, and to the point, I mean, that argument carried on for about 5 years.
sure.
And like, okay, sure, sure. So we do what Florida did and make it a sterile technique, and so now we need an OR and sterile gloves, and the price of tattoo just went
Yeah.
up dramatically.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so distilled waters worked for a long time, John. Sorry to tell you that. But yeah, there are some definitely good points in AFTO, especially the manufacturer talk. But I firmly believe AFTO is missing one of the biggest opportunities they have for the industry to, number one, for the industry to get involved and tattoo artists to get involved, but also to be influential. And something to know about AFTO, that's where the FDA started. AFTO came before the FDA. The FDA was formed with AFTO members. Okay, so if you want to talk about the close connection, also AFTO gets its funding from the FDA. So we just always trace the dollars, right?
Yeah,
And,
yeah. I'm with you though. I think it's important to be part of these discussions and be on these calls and have a voice there. And my hope with discussions like this with you and with this podcast in general is to educate the tattoo the tattoo industry, the
yeah,
artists, the manufacturers, and start bridging that gap and giving people resources to get involved. And I would love to see more people on those AFTO calls. It's
yeah,
discouraging. It's a little bit of a letdown when you're the only person on the calls with a voice. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
I don't.
yeah. Well, I'll explain just kind of high level the history of that and probably why that is. There used to be a lot of us on those calls, and like I said, I'm still on them. I'm still listening in, and I'm very active. I'll be speaking at the APTO conference next month in Dallas,
Yeah.
right? So like,
Yep.
super active. I think it's still a good cause, but I've been discouraged quite a bit with that group, multiple multiple occasions, and there's still some opportunity there, and that's why I'm sticking with it. And hopefully, with enough of us getting back involved and re-engaged, we could actually do something that's good. But there was quite a few of us on there, and at one point there was a 2-hour debate over the term injection,
I remember that.
and this was, that really turned a lot of people off. That conversation. Beyond that, AFTO is stuck, and this is kind of what drives me crazy with all the groups, is we get tattoo artists and piercers on there that are thinking about the best practices, not the minimum standards. And they're preaching the best practices to these lawmakers and these regulators instead of what the minimum standards should be, right? There's a reason that we should have minimum standards, especially when we're talking to the government. Okay, OSHA, for instance, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, they set a minimum standard for workers, right? For employers and workers.
Right.
You could go above and beyond all you want. You could be extra safe. You could get certifications from OSHA for being over the top safe, but they have a minimum standard. And then the states are allowed to go above that. They cannot go below it, but they're allowed to go above it. Same scenario in tattooing needs to take place. We need a minimum standard because standards are coming, right? But we need to set it minimum. What is that bottom line that's going to keep people safe, including the tattoo artist safe, right? Then if states want to go above and beyond, that's up to the state. Let's start there. Problem with AFTO and NEHA is they're constantly saying best practice, best practice. One reason a lot of the manufacturers left is this group decided to tell us how we should label our product based on what's already out there, right? But the best practices of it. Then they went against the industry's wishes because we said, hey, this is enough right here. This follows the law. This gets us in compliant with cosmetics. This is good. No, they went ahead and modified it a little bit. Then they presented it to the FDA. So there's a loss of trust right there that happened almost immediately, right?
Yeah.
So everybody just said, you know what, hands up, we're going to go somewhere else. Screw this. Second time, a little bit of loss of trust with me. I went to the FDA headquarters in DC for a conference on cosmetics. I was the only tattoo manufacturer there, the tattoo artist. I was the only one. The head of AFTO was there too. So I had a chance to catch up with them and ask them exactly what had occurred in this instance. The FDA came out with guidance 2 years ago, right? And like I told you, they come out with their draft first. We have a chance to comment, and then that guidance becomes their rule, right? And that rule could eventually become the law. So we, as AFTO, had a chance to comment on it, and the big topic again was injection, right? And I'll get into that in just a little bit, but that was a big topic. We, for the first time in over a decade, that AFTO group voted on something, voted a majority of us to change that term and to change some of the mechanics around how they were describing tattooing. That went nowhere. AFTO decided not to present it to the FDA because they specifically said that they have the regulators at best interest, not the industry. So we lost more people when that occurred, right? Then they came back and said, oh, we could still comment. It just doesn't go on official record. So they sent in our comments after the window had closed, which the FDA, like, they got to get them, they got to receive them, but they don't have to listen to them at that point, right?
Sure.
They don't have to put them
Sure.
in the official record.
Right.
So that being said, that all happened. Now what's happened since is they've gone from one chairperson in that committee to four, I think, and they're trying to add a fifth. We now, as an industry and trade, have representation at a higher level in that group. We have someone representing manufacturing. We have someone representing tattooing, someone representing piercing. We're trying to get someone to represent PMU. And then we have a regulator or lawmaker sits on there too. So for the first time in history, AFTA has allowed us to have representation on their board, on our board, right? So that's a big change. That's one of the reasons I'm sticking around. Now, the missed opportunity that I see in here, Rob, is like the term injection. It's still there, right? The reason that's a big deal to me is because we're not only regulated under cosmetics in the US, we are regulated under color additives.
Right.
The FDA classifies tattoo pigment as a color additive.
Right.
No color additive is permitted to be injected.
And that's why the hang up on the word injection, because tattooing is not really injected.
No, it's not. I mean, if you look at some of the slow, there's an awesome video by these British guys that do a bunch of slow motion close-up videos, and they did one. I'll have to share it with you, but they did one on tattooing, and they admit, like, we're not tattoo artists, we don't know what we're doing, man. Don't get tattooed by us, we're gonna mess you up, right? But one of their things they pointed out was the mechanics between that, or of the application of tattooing, and as that needle was inserted into the ballistics gel, nothing happened. The pigment actually got pulled off of the needle. When that needle exited the ballistics gel, the pigment shot in with no needle in there, right? So that needle had made the wound, and as it was pulling, that tissue back, that the ballistics gel back, the ink was deposited.
Sure.
Right there, it proves it's not injected, right?
Sure.
Now there are some talks and hopefully some studies happening right now that are going to help support us. But we already have medical doctors that are backing us on this. AFTA really needs to work on that. That should be our main focus right now for our industry,
because
that term injection.
yeah, I agree. Because when I'm on those calls, I always get the impression that AFDO is working with us, right, not against us. So
yeah.
So I get where you're coming from with that, and I do remember that whole injection thing.
Well, and remember, and I think for the most part, the part AFTO is there to bring industry and regulators together, right? So for the most part, I think that's what their intent is. Just remember that there is a lot of regulators listening to those calls too, not saying anything.
Sure.
Right. So again, if we start to spurting off best practices, it's the same thing's going to happen here that happened in Europe. Ink manufacturer approached the regulators in Europe saying, you need to regulate this. Gave them what they should regulate, and then guess what happened? Every year or every 2 years, they got more strict. It started in 2003, by the way. More strict, more strict, more strict, and now look, REACH. Now that ink manufacturer can't even meet the REACH standards.
Right. That's what they were saying. It's impossible to make REACH compliant inks.
Yeah, the guy who started it can't do it. So it's like, you just gotta figure out the motive behind some of that crap. But it's crazy.
Well, even in the conference, we were talking about what they had was it on the first day when they had the tattoo? They had a workshop, and it was.
I think that was the second evening. Yeah, the second day.
Yeah. Skin and health, and then they were talking about using petroleum.
Yeah. That doctor straight up said that Vaseline. Yeah. She actually specifically said Vaseline is the best aftercare to use.
Yeah, we were like, what? No, we know not to use petroleum. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, my dumb ass didn't know everybody could see the comments on there because all of a sudden my mic was off mute.
So. Dude, think about like, God, I don't even know, 15 years ago? Yeah. Probably every tattoo studio you went into probably had Vaseline on their workstation.
Oh, for sure. And some still do, right? And that's the thing, too, is like, how do we come together to get this level of ignorance from the lawmakers to subside, right? How do we educate them just enough to feel that they're doing their job and they're protecting the public, but not overstimulate them to where they think they know better than us.
Right.
Right. So that's the dichotomy. Like we gotta figure that out, and we gotta figure it out quick, because I'm telling you, CFDA gets organized again, we could expect to see this rule come across.
Yeah, they're not sleeping, that's for sure. They're
No,
definitely not sleeping at
they're
the
hitting
wheel.
everybody too. I don't know about you guys, but I mean they're going around. The regulatory side of the FDA is alive and healthy.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel like I'm in a pretty good place right now. If they came to visit me, I feel like I'm
Yeah, I'm
pretty
sure you
good.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's taken a lot of time to get there, you know what I mean? But I feel like if they came in, I feel like I can have them in and out of there relatively quickly
Well,
and
the
be
funny
able
part about it
to.
too, Rob, is they're not going to know anything about tattoo, and you're going to know more than they do. So every time they come to visit us, they're food inspectors.
Yeah.
Same thing that tattoo shops see when state regulators come in. Most states don't have specific tattoo enforcement or tattoo inspectors, right? It's all they cross over from the food world, you know. So wait till they
Well,
bring thermometers and start testing the temperature of ink.
well, we're not sleeping on anything in my company. You know what I mean? We are actively involved in safety and making sure that our products are compliant. I've already got, I've been dealing with the FDA for years, just with a few of the products that I manufacture specific to lidocaine, and we have Electrum Cleanse, which is still the only FDA approved Class 1 medical device in the tattoo space. So I'm familiar with that whole process, and I don't like to play with the government. You know what I mean? I pay my taxes. I just don't fuck with the government, man. You know what I mean?
No, I don't either, but I don't like when they fuck with us either. So,
But
uh,
yeah,
it's
unfortunately, you don't have any control over that. And if they
yeah,
decide they're going to come,
yeah, but we do. We have some rights, right? And we have some voice and some strength in numbers. We just all need to stay in our own lanes. And when I say that, it's us as an industry need to be in our own lane, and they need to be in theirs. And one good thing about going to Capitol Hill is, and the congressmen really get this, and so do the senators, is we are the industry experts. They know they don't know everything. The problem comes is when we see that person who presented that Vaseline is the best aftercare. Those kind of people think they know everything about tattooing.
right,
I
right,
mean, last time I doubt she'd ever walked into a tattoo shop, and if it was probably 1985. You
right.
know, so it's we need to figure out how to work together and work with the government, just enough to satisfy all the needs, because we're a victim of our own success, man. Like, they're not going away.
Oh yeah, I know.
It's just gonna get crazier out there.
The business of tattooing is brought to you by Electrum Supply, the industry leader in high-quality tattoo supplies designed by artists for artists. Whether you need premium stencil products, top-tier cartridges, or game-changing aftercare, Electrum has you covered with innovative, artist-tested solutions you can trust. Want to elevate your work? Head over to electrumsupply.com and stock up on the best gear in the business. And because you're a listener of the business of tattooing, use code podcast10 at checkout for 10% off your next order. Stay sharp, stay stocked, and stay ahead with Electrum Supply. Yeah, so where are we at today? Because like we talked about CTS, which is the Coalition for Tattoo Safety, that was going on 2018, right? Is that about the right time?
Yeah, I think we started 17 or 18, something like that, and I think the big meeting was a little bit before, probably 18 or 19, something like that.
Yeah, I felt like it was like 2018, and that was Mario, Barth, and Tramp, and uh,
It was pretty much everybody,
Lou
right?
was there. We had some Kingpin people there. I think some Sullen people were there.
The most badass lunch we ever had, but also the most awkward.
It was awkward, and I'll be honest with you, man. Like when Tramp approached me to come out there, and he showed me, I was like, "Well, who's all coming out there?" And at the time, I only had the stencil product still. I think, like,
Yeah.
I hadn't even expanded that far yet into products. But I was very territorial in the stencil space. I was like, I don't want to go sit in the same room with Mario from Stencil Stuff. Like that dude's my competitor. Like,
Yep.
what are we talking about? Our businesses? Like what's the whole, I
Yeah.
was so
Yeah.
skeptical over all this whole thing, but I still went out there, and it was great to, I've actually become really, really good friends with Mario now. And, that probably would have never happened if I didn't go out to Vegas and actually spend some time with him out there. So to to the credit of the CTS, I think it accomplished what it originally set out to do in regards to helping bridge some of those gaps. I'm not really sure what all the reasons it fell apart were. I mean, obviously I've heard things, and I had my own reasons for getting out of the CTS, but mine were more primarily around, I just didn't think it was very organized. You know what I mean? I just felt
Yeah.
like it was a lot of fundraising without really knowing what the funds were going to get used for. And
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I mean, the idea behind it and what Mario and Tramp and the rest of the guys put together was groundbreaking. It's historical. I mean, it really was. I don't know of a time in the tattoo industry where that many different players in the game got together and had a serious talk all at once, and
yeah,
and that was huge. And what we did, we at CTS we had some successes on Capitol Hill, some big ones, and those successes are we're still feeling them today, and we still need to fight for them because they could go away as well. But one thing we got was we got removed from the ingredient review process that the FDA and the Environmental Working Group wanted us to have, which is very similar to what happened in Europe in REACH. And our lobbying efforts, we got them to take it out. And so that was huge. And a lot of people don't realize that if that would have passed with MoCRA, we would be in a much different environment in the industry right now. I don't think we would have as many manufacturers today if that had passed.
right,
And one of the great things, and Mario is the one who really kind of spearheaded it. But one of the great things is like uh, we need competition. Like it shouldn't be one or two companies out there. It shouldn't.
right,
More the better. Let's do it, man. Like that's what makes us better as an industry.
right,
Uh,
right,
and Mario was an advocate about that, and he's obviously probably articulated a lot better than I could. But it really hit home. Like we could get rid of that competition for a while and work together, and that's what we did. I do think, and this just my personal opinion, I do think it fell apart because it was poorly executed and organized at the end of the day, right? Just like you said, it didn't feel organized, and I think that's kind of why people started to fall off.
right.
But honestly, it would take someone full time doing that, and we didn't have that.
Sure.
We all were running businesses. Like there's there's no way one of us could step back and do it full time.
Right, right. Well, yeah, we have enough. I mean, personally speaking, I have enough trouble trying to manage the safety of my company,
Yeah,
and still focus on the overall management of the company and everything that goes under that whole entire umbrella, you know?
right,
So,
right, exactly.
I recently hired a CEO and an operations manager just to come in and kind of take some of the day-to-day stuff off my hands so that I could be more focused on the
Yeah,
safety aspect of things, just because we realize as a company how much attention we need to be paying to this and how much, we need to be devoting a specific amount of time to these things, and compliance and these things. So I'm thankful now that I have some freedom to do uh, the things that I need to do and work with our manufacturers, because we've also outsourced a lot of our manufacturing. We've historically always made all of our stencil products in house.
hmm
But with MoCRA, I was like, well, I don't really want to have to deal with ISO certification, and I don't want to have to deal with all this record keeping in house. I said, let's
yeah,
just find somebody local that can manufacture our products that already has all this stuff done. We'll
yeah.
still keep oversight on the quality side of things, and we'll make sure things are still made to our standards, but we don't have to mess with trying to maintain ownership of that liability anymore. So
Yeah, that's a smart move, actually. I mean, the ISO stuff, it's no joke. I mean, it's achievable, but it's not, not taken
yeah,
lightly.
I just want to focus on running my business and
Yeah. Well, you're
doing
a
what
lot,
I love doing. You know what I
yeah,
mean? I
we're
don't,
a lot alike in that matter. Like we're both innovators, so sometimes it's hard for us to be in the weeds of all the operations.
yeah,
Like we
yeah,
want to go out and just, hey, I got this idea, let's do that. And then the rest
right.
of the team's like, man, you're fucking crazy. There's no way. And we're like, yeah, we could do it. We could do it. So for
Yeah,
innovative personalities, it's difficult for us to really get wrapped up because if we lose that piece, the business loses a lot too.
yeah, exactly right. I mean, at the end of the day, we're artists. And I think when
Yeah,
artists lose that creative space to create things, then our passion starts to die.
exactly.
And that's definitely been a challenge for me, especially over the past few years, as the business has grown. And I've tried to find ways to still be able to maintain the same core values as we grow as a company, because it gets harder and harder to do.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge I think for any company, right?
Yeah. And I have to constantly remind myself that this is just a normal course of things that everybody
Yeah.
goes through. I'm not unique in this thing that I'm going through. So CTS kind of fell apart. I remember one other attempt that you made to get some things going on another. I don't even know if it even had a title to that group. It was
No, I sent out an email trying to get everybody back together, just saying, hey, this is happening, and this is what I heard on the Hill, and I think it's important. And it was very quickly two things. One, met with a lot of resistance because I think the CTS, kind of overlook on that, and that was kind of defeating to me. Like, man, this is important. I can't see, I can't understand why some of these guys just don't see this.
right,
And my natural instinct as a human, my gut reaction was, oh, you just want all of us to do the hard work and you
right,
don't want to ride the coattails.
right.
Is that correct? Probably not. Probably just a bad projection on my half, but that was my initial reaction, right? Like, okay, so you just continue to ride the coattails of everybody else then. But I knew that if we couldn't get some of these players involved, that it wouldn't be successful. And so that kind of died out. The second part of that was I quickly remembered that I have other things to do as well.
Sure,
And I asked some people for help on organizing it, and they ended up having some of their personal, other, personal, professional challenges too. So kind of died out. I've asked the APT to organize a committee just for manufacturers because the APT has been around for so long. And while they're mainly a trade organization, I think that having a space for the manufacturers to talk without a bunch of regulators is probably a good idea, and to kind of unify and see what direction we need to go in. Also, the APT has a capability of lobbying as well, and they would move a lot of perspectives on Capitol Hill just because of the amount of people they have involved and how many constituents they could touch, right? And,
sure.
and at the end of the day, on Capitol Hill, that's what matters. Every congressman, well, how many tattoo shops are in my district? Well, how many people in my district are tattooed? So if you could show some of those stats, you get their attention real quick. Um,
So do you feel like the APT is the central place for that to happen today?
it feels like the fastest and most organic route to get there. I don't know if that's the answer, to be honest. I do. I got to say, we need more voices from manufacturers. Like, it's not fair to the industry or the trade to have one or two voices. It's just not.
Sure.
We need different opinions. We need to be able to debate and work things out and move forward.
So do
We
you
need,
just
we need a trade organization is what we need. Every other organization or every other industry out there has a trade organization. APT
Yeah, and I
might be
think
the
that
first answer.
I think the APT is really trying to position themselves as that today for sure.
Yeah. Just, I mean, I don't know if they understand, the board members understand how vital it is right now. The timing is now to get the manufacturers organized, because if the FDA pushes this rule by the end of the year like they're supposed to, we're not going to have much time to get organized.
So do you think is that so I'm an Indiana state rep for the APT. I'm involved with the APT. Do you think I'm not aware of a manufacturers group in the APT right now. Do you think they just went through their voting process, so their whole board has just changed, Mick O'Haron is now the president.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do you think maybe it's beneficial for a guy like me to go talk to them and say, hey, we want to do this, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah. I
start
do.
trying to lobby and get other manufacturers involved in that? Is that kind of where the
Yeah,
progression of
yeah. I've
things
been I've
go?
been talking to them, and Mick knows this too. I've been bringing it up for the last 2 years now that we need this. But to have more of us go do that would be super helpful. I mean, it's they're already organized, and it makes sense to kind of team up with it, especially us being members and us being tattoo artists. Like, it
Sure.
really makes sense to keep it there to me. Um, Now, does that grow into its own trade organization just for manufacturers? That'd be awesome. I mean, I truly believe we're going to need some kind of organization amongst us to go head this off on Capitol Hill. The more the better.
How much time do you think we have to get that organized and get it to a place where we're organized enough that we can be effective on Capitol Hill
I'm probably, if I had to really guess, if I had a crystal ball, I'd say probably early fall.
of
Um,
this year?
yeah, we need to have something going pretty quick. If we could get it sooner, at least started, we could start organizing and be ready for it. Now, there is a chance that the FDA will ask for an extension on that rule. But as you see, Kennedy is moving pretty quick
Sure.
on some of this stuff. His primary focus right now is on food, and colorants just came out. They just started talking about different colorants they want to get rid of. Well,
Right.
guess where
And they
we're at?
have been getting rid of some.
Yeah, guess where we're at, right? Now,
Right.
fortunately, we don't use any of those colorants, but what's next? Cosmetics.
Sure.
Cosmetics isn't a huge focus, but just from uh, his stance and the administration's stance on this, we need to get organized now. We need to be able to come to them saying, yeah, we are organized. And here's what we have to say about it as industry experts.
What's the what do you feel like the consequences might be if that extension doesn't happen? And let's just say that the deadline is falling, we're not organized. What do you think the consequence of that would be for
We're
us?
going to have a lot less of an impact with the FDA. If we don't hit Congress, the FDA is not going to listen to us. Just like they didn't listen to, there was like, don't quote me on this, but I think 9 to 15 different comments on the last guidance they put out. One of them, a couple of them was on the term injection. The FDA did listen to that, but instead of taking the term injection out, they used our definition in conjunction with the term injection, injected or placed. No, they need to take injection out. Are they only thinking about eyeball tattoos? Is that why they're using the word injection? I don't know, but
Sure.
they're not listening to us fully. They're not hearing us. So if we don't get organized, I don't see them listening to us ever, to be honest.
Do you see key players like Mario Barth and Tramp coming back into the fold if we got something like that organized? Because I feel like those guys are really key players, especially in the pigment space,
I can't speak for Mario, and I really can't speak for Tramp either. I'm closer with Tramp than I am Mario, and I think Tramp would definitely be interested in coming in and supporting it. A lot of this regulation, though, is like you could get in the weeds on it, as you found out, and as you've seen last week. But I definitely think we get their support. I don't know where Mario stands on it today. I just don't. I don't talk to him enough about that stuff. So um, I think the invitation should be sent to both of them.
Sure.
I think the
Sure.
invitation should go out to everybody,
Sure.
and not just U.S. manufacturers either.
Do you
Like
think it
I
should
think
just
everybody.
start? Do you think it should start with the ink manufacturers, or do you think it should go back to kind of like how CTS was approaching it, where it's basically any manufacturer in the tattoo space with any product?
Well, I think there's value in starting off with just the manufacturers, but I also think there's value in bringing on different fields as well, like
Sure.
aftercare, stencil products, things like that. Um, should all those groups be in the same meetings? I don't know the answer to that. I specifically would think it should be, when we
Segment
talk
focused.
ink, yeah, it should be okay. We're talking about ink today. Now, they could be invited, they could show up, but they don't need to contribute. That's up to them, right? If they
Right.
don't
Right.
know anything about ink, like why should they contribute? However, the manufacturers of all products in our industry should support each other, right?
Sure.
We're like I said, it's a snowball effect. It started with the ink. Aftercare's next. Stencil products. Anything, if you read MoCRA and the definition, it's any product that is applied during the time of a tattoo.
Yeah, I
Any product.
remember. I remember a few months ago, well, maybe sometime last year actually, where I was reading some of the terminology under MoCRA, and it was pretty baseline. It said something to the effect of like basically anything that comes in contact with the skin
Yep.
had potential to be regulated. And then I'm starting to think, and I'm like, well, markers touch the skin,
Yeah.
thermal paper touches the skin. I'm
Paper
like,
towels.
how far in the weeds are we getting with this, man? Because this is crazy.
Yeah, yeah, they could go as far as they want to the way the law is written. Now the rules are going to be telling of how far they want to go with it.
Right.
You could. That's what I said, man. If we don't have minimum standards, it's just going to keep piling up, piling up, piling up.
Man, I'll tell you, I hired this group called Obellis when all this stuff started happening. I was so overwhelmed with it, and I didn't really understand it. So I went out and I sought the help of this basically an FDA consultatory firm, right?
Sure,
So
sure.
basically, they know all this stuff. They basically consult with you, review your labels, review your products, what's in them, tell you if it's going to fly, if it's not. But man, they were really scrutinizing like even like our thermal paper, and I was like, why are we looking at thermal paper right now? I was like, that's not even a key area of focus. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
paper. You know, I
yeah.
was like,
The FDA inspector is not going to come in and look at your paper right
right, right. So I had to get rid of them because they were expensive and they were just wasting time on a lot of stuff that I felt like was crazy. But
A phone call to me or a text is a lot cheaper.
oh, dude, yeah, we spent a lot of money with that firm, and it was crazy because eventually I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to do this myself because I'm a progress guy, man. Like I want to get shit done. I don't want to sit
Yeah,
on calls
right.
indefinitely and just talk, 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 not get anything
Yeah,
checked off the
yeah, yeah.
list.
Sure.
And so I'm like, let's have a call. Let's set up some action items next week. Let's make sure the action items got checked off.
Right.
And that wasn't happening with them. And I was like, I'm not going to keep spending money with you guys. This is crazy.
Oh, man, they're billing you for the hour.
Yeah, dude. It's like, dude, I should have been a lawyer, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Bill by the minute.
Dude,
There's I've seen a lot of that too happening in the industry. There's a lot of companies, a lot of individuals that are taking advantage of these laws, right? And what's going on. There's a lot of them in AFTO. A lot of private companies that are. That's another reason I'm a little weary sometimes about what's shared in some of those groups is because you don't know the intent. If
well, I
it's
get it, dude. I get
or
it.
what.
I get it. That's what I was talking to you about earlier, where I'm like, I'm apprehensive because like I've put a lot of man hours into my safety substantiation and like I've written
Mhm.
all these processes and and I'm like they were on the AFTO call talking about safety substantiation and I'm like, man, I'm miles ahead of you guys on all this stuff. And I'm like, so I shared one little piece of information with them and they were like on it, they're like, oh
Yeah,
my God, this is what
yeah.
we've been trying to do for months. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, I didn't do all this work just to like,
Give it away.
yeah, I don't,
Yeah.
so, but at the same time, I want to help, you know what I mean? But it's like,
For sure, for sure. And that's where I'm at too. I want to help. Like, if you need help, you call me. Like, it's not about not helping even competitors. Like, I'll help. But it's about who's getting the information and what the intent is to use that information. Are they going to go try to make the law even crazier? Are they because oh yeah, that was easy to meet. So okay, well if they had an easy time meeting that, what about this, right? Or is their intent to go earn a dollar off of it? Are they going to go charge other manufacturers now to take my information and consult with them?
right,
I get really, really kind of weary, and it's just because of the stuff I've seen happen in those groups. We need to be involved in those groups, but I got to be cautious, and I caution everybody on what they share with them.
right,
I want to know. I want them to divest to me what their intent is. Why is safety substantiation such a big topic today when we should be talking about why the FDA didn't use our definition of what a tattoo is that was medically supported, right? Like we had medical doctors sign off on that.
yeah.
Why? That's a bigger topic to me.
And it's interesting too, because once you start sharing information with them, then you become a key focus area for them. Like
Oh yeah.
then
Oh
they
yeah.
start saying, well, hey, Sean, what about this?
Yeah.
Hey, Sean, what do you know about this? Hey, Sean, do you got any information on this?
Yeah.
And then they just want you to keep giving them more and more and more. And like you said, you're
Mhm.
never really sure where that's going or what they're going to do with it.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah. I want to be in some of those meetings behind the curtain. Behind those closed doors.
well, don't you think the same thing would happen if we try to organize again under the APT under the same circumstance? Because I feel like,
If we could keep it, if we could keep it just tattooers and just manufacturers, no regulators, no private companies that are consulting firms that are, you know what I'm saying? You need to be a member. Like, and this is just, again, just my opinion, but if we, and I hate saying the word safe space, but if we can make it a safe space for manufacturers to actually sit and talk about what we need to talk about in order to go and unify and organize in front of Congress and get stuff actually done and move that dial, I think it could be successful under APT. It's when we bring in those regulators and those third party companies that stuff kind of starts to go sideways.
Sure.
And I'm not saying we need to talk in secret. Like
Right,
I'm
right, right.
saying it needs to be an educated discussion and debate over how we're going to move forward and what is the priority, right? Prioritize and like you said, like check it off the list, get some action items. Let's go, let's move, And I tell you, the with the numbers, we would have a big effect on the Hill.
Yeah, I'd really like to see that happen. Like I said, I would have loved to see CTS be a successful thing. I would have
Yeah,
loved,
me too.
I would have loved, just sitting back and watching all the time that you've poured into this personally, and
Yeah.
not finding success in the efforts that you've tried to personally get off the ground, I think has to be really discouraging to you. And
It is, but again, I'm all about the industry and the trade, man. Like I'm not going to stop. I know in my heart and my gut what's right for the industry, uh, you know, and I know that, and I'm not saying I'm the all sane knowing what's right, but I'm not going to just lay down. I'm a fighter, I'm a
right,
tech
right.
fighter first. Fuck that. Like they want to bring the fight. They've hit us, man. Think about it like a street fight, right? Like they swung a punch, they hit us, gave us a fat lip, it hurt. Now we know how they hit, and now we hit back harder, right?
Right, right.
And having these things shot down, it all it does is just teach me that wasn't the right route to go, or the right time. And it's I still believe wholeheartedly that we need to get organized, and we need to Mario and Tramp and all those guys were onto something.
Yeah,
We need
so
to continue that in one form or another.
it's kind of up to us now. I feel like
It is.
we're the two guys really that it's kind
It
of
is,
up to
yeah.
us to kind of revitalize that, right?
Yeah, and I know. Speaking to some of the other manufacturers, they're on board too. They're just waiting on us to organize. Is really what's happening.
Yeah, so I would like to take an action item out of this call with you, and
Yeah,
we've talked about it before. I message you all the time, say, Sean, how can I help you, man? What can I do?
sure.
And I'm serious about that, because I feel like I'm on an island by myself a lot of the times, and I know I can't win the battle by myself.
Right.
Nobody gives a fuck about me or what I have to say, individually.
All the way around, man.
You know what I
For me.
mean? So it's like,
So,
but collectively, I think you're right. We can really make an impact. We have we have massive amounts of energy and knowledge between
oh
all
yeah,
of our resources. An unstoppable
yeah,
amount.
yeah. It's just a key of picking up where kind of CTS left off and learning from why it didn't work, right? And it could have been the timing. Could have been. This is
Well, and
being
the lack of organization, I feel like we've
yeah,
identified that as a big detriment, right?
yeah,
So,
yeah. Timing and organization. Maybe that's the key, right? And maybe we get APT on board and organize a committee. I mean, honestly, the way it should be ran, and I've told this to the APT board is their committee should be ran by their board members, right? That's who should chair it. That's how the business structure should be. And we need a board member to start the committee and then report back to the board on what's going on, right? And say, hey, our committee, we need to go lobby next month, and this is why, and then get board approval and go do it. The structure could be there, and it already is established. We just need them to now come through for us.
I almost feel like it should be like an offshoot of the APT, but still part of the APT. Like
Sure.
APT is Alliance of Professional Tattooists, so maybe it's Alliance of Professional Manufacturers in the tattoo space, but probably be beneficial if it had its own set of board members that's separate from the actual APT board
Absolutely.
members
Yeah, that would be awesome, man.
and just has its own agenda that works within the parameters of the APT and,
Yeah.
as a trade organization.
Well, let's go
And
pitch it to them.
I think that's an easy thing
Yeah.
to pitch. I mean, we already know all the right people in the organization to talk to. So, I mean, I don't think they would have a problem with it if they're not accepting more responsibility and trying to run the thing themselves, because I feel like they're all pretty overwhelmed already with what they have on their plates.
Yeah. No, I hear that.
So I could see that. I could see that not getting very getting a lot of wings and flying if we went that route.
Right. Right. Yeah. I just back to the point of it is just organization and unity.
Yeah.
It's time. When CTS started, Reach wasn't out yet, but we knew it was coming.
Yeah. And like I said
Almost was
earlier,
coming. So
well, I think it's pretty scary when they call Reach the gold standard. And then, because you're looking at Canada, you're looking at Asia, you're looking at all of Europe, UK, part of, uh, who's not part of the EU, but still is eventually going to have to adopt some safety regulations as well. I mean, uh, there's a lot of, I mean, it's scary to think about what could happen in the manufacturing space if we don't, because realistically, I mean, there could realistically only be a couple of ink companies in a few years. I mean,
well, I mean, that's what we saw happen in Europe, right? Before these laws came into place, before RESAP 2008, there was quite a few manufacturers, and then 2008 hit, and it just dive bomb.
yeah, because they can't comply.
Yeah, yeah, and
So
that's when U.S. companies really stepped up over there, and we were the majority of ink over there, and now it's bad for everybody.
yeah, and you're right about the aftercare too, because they did bring up aftercare in the conference last week, and they
Mhm.
were focused on fragrances and aftercare, and
Yeah,
are people sensitive to fragrances and aftercare, and should fragrances be allowed in aftercare? And I'm listening to that, and I'm like, oh my god, like,
yeah,
there
yeah.
goes 75% of the aftercare products.
Yep. Yeah, back to Vaseline we go.
Oh man, I
Yeah,
think like
that's the thing. Like on some of their ideologies, right? People could be allergic to anything. Like in California, I swear they must be allergic to the air also, because Prop 65 over there, it's fucking crazy.
yeah,
It's like Europe, man. Like, yes, people could be allergic to anything.
yeah.
What are we going to attack next?
Well, it's not like that just in our space. I mean, look at emissions, for example, and the exhaust coming out of your car, and how much variability that is from state to state, and the
Yeah,
emission laws.
yeah,
It's crazy. It is crazy.
yeah, yeah. It's nuts. But we got to figure it out, man. And I think the conference really just showed all the holes that are in reach, right?
Well, it also showed how many holes are in the unification of us as manufacturers, to your point, like,
Yeah,
because it was very alarming to not see more people there
yeah,
from our
yeah,
industry.
yeah. Yeah, there are a few European companies, but that was about it. I didn't.
Nobody from the US. I mean,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I maybe know one or two companies that was there in person, and that was it, man. And not like 2 years ago in Vienna, there was quite a few of us that showed up. So, and I don't know if that's because not a lot's changed, or because Reach is already so far down the road that people think that we can't influence Reach now. That it's a battle. I was telling someone earlier that I think it's going to have to come down to a court case. I think it's going to have to come down to a lawsuit there in Europe, especially in Germany. And I think if we get a lawsuit going, they'll start to move.
well,
But
wasn't there one already going with the guy from what's like one of the first guys that talked?
Ralph,
The what's it called? Just Ink.
yeah, yeah, Ralph, yeah, he did mention one. So, and I think it's what it's going to take is something like that. I mean, it's going to have to be. Uh, one of the things in Europe is Reach left it open for interpretation by every member state, right? So every member state there can interpret the law differently, and they are. And there's no standardized testing for tattoo pigment. So they're all using different methods and different standards, and we're all getting different results.
Sure.
One of the biggest testing labs over there that almost all the companies use will even tell you it's a crapshoot. I sent 10 samples of the same product with different labels on it to them and got 8 different results.
You're talking about CTL?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
8 different results. Same product.
Really?
And I called him out on it too. And I said, "How do I get 8 different results of the same product?" He's like, "Oh, you must have added more water. You must have added this product." And I said, "No, no, it's same exact batch, just in different bottles." same process,
Wow.
sterilized the same, like sterilized in the same batch.
How much variation were there in the results?
Quite a bit, man. And they were surprised by it. And then he did a presentation. They did a presentation in Vienna talking about how there's no standards, so everyone just kind of flying by their seat of their pants, man.
Man, that's crazy too because it is not cheap to have things tested at CTL.
No, it's not cheap at any of the labs,
Yeah, it's
right?
crazy.
And they're all different. So they're all testing slightly different way. They're all doing different ways. Different. They call them standards, right? They got to purchase the standards, and it's different chemicals they use to look at the little, the spikes in their test and stuff like that. And what CTL does is they look at all the spikes and then try to identify them and see if they're regulated. And they are. Then are they above the limit or below it or just at it? Um, Slightly different versions of that at different labs at every other lab. The government is doing their own test, right? So
Yeah.
it's interesting. And composition
Well,
testing on tattoo pigment is next to an impossible feat.
well, it makes me wonder how much variability there is in the government testing methods.
Tons. So even here in the U.S., there's variability with the FDA and versus what we do.
Right. So how do you
You know?
pinpoint what's safe then? I mean, how can you pinpoint anything if there's that much variation?
Exactly. Exactly. That's another problem, and that was brought up at the conference, right? Like they need. I think Ralph was the one who brought it up, but they need to all be on the same page. This left up to interpretation to me was an easy way out for the lawmakers, saying, "Man, this is pretty robust." And Dr. Serp called it a monstrosity, and
Right.
it is. It's a monstrosity, and there's so much in there. I mean, you've looked at it. You know how many different pages there are,
Yeah.
and you read one section and it refers to a totally different law, Appendix 13 over here, and you go over to Appendix and oh, well, that refers to another law. Now you're way over here, and by the time you're 4,000 pages through it, you still don't understand which way's up.
Sure. Right. Yeah, it's crazy because they just keep adding more shit to it every day.
Right.
Yeah, fucking ridiculous. Oh man. Switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
How do you feel like things like I hate constantly talking about this, but I'm just curious about it all the time with people I talk with. How do you feel like things like this? I'm sure you've seen that black dot thing. You've seen that the
No.
tattoo machine, the AI tattoo machine.
Oh yes. Yeah.
So how do
Yeah.
you feel like things like black dot or like the bio ink, for example, that they talked about in the conference? How do you feel like things like that tie into all this? How do you feel like that affects the progression of the industry positively or negatively? Do you feel like it makes things more difficult for us?
Yes. It's a yes and answer for sure. It's natural progression. As we have more and more success, as we're more vocal, as we're more in the public eye all the way around, and you've seen all these articles speaking out. These fear tactic articles that are coming out in the media about lymph nodes and tattoo pigment, all that. As we gain more publicity, whether negative or positive, more and more different companies and different innovators are going to try to come in. So, 20 years ago, there was a company called Superior out of Phoenix,
Sure.
Arizona, right? I don't remember them, but
Mm-hmm.
one of they sold out to a NASA engineer, and he came up with a tattoo machine that you could slow all the way down to literally hit one stroke at the same power than if you had it up to like 9 volts, right? And you could slow and you could stipple with it and do all kinds of really cool stuff. At that time, I was like, man, this is pretty innovative, like pretty amazing. Well, it never caught on, right? Look at all the stippling that's out there now. You
Right.
know, it
Right.
would have caught on now if you would have done it now. It definitely would have caught on, but it was about timing. So on one hand, we've seen stuff like this all the time. Is it going to catch on? I don't think any of that will really catch on unless the regulations become overbearing, and they're the only ones that can meet the regulations.
Got
Like
you.
here in Austin, we have that robot that's doing tattoos. It's been all over the news, right? Doing
Well,
little
that is right.
yeah,
That is in Austin. Black dot
yeah,
is in Austin. Yeah.
yeah. So it's been all over the news, and they've interviewed tattoo artists and friends of mine and stuff. And um, I don't think again, I don't think it's going to be catch on right away unless these regulations kind of get overbearing.
Yeah, I'm not worried about whether it catches on or not. I'm more worried about it from a safety substantiation point and what that's
Oh, it's gonna that complicates it, right? But also you gotta look too, like companies that are able to put stuff out there like that. What kind of backing do they have, and are they going to be able to do testing that shows that that robot's safer than a tattoo artist?
well, I mean, they've already got $7 million invested in that project, I believe.
Exactly. That's a part that kind of worries me, right?
Yeah,
You're
because
not,
they clearly have the money.
right,
Right.
right. So that's kind of where I get a little apprehensive about it.
Yeah, because I wondered when I first heard about that thing and I was like, how is that thing, how do they maintain sterility with that machine? Like how does that go from one person to the next and
Yeah.
remain a safe device to
Yeah, I have tons of questions about it too, and the only reason I haven't asked it is because I don't want to give them any ideas.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know? So,
yeah.
but yeah, I've thought about going down and seeing it in person and checking it out. But yeah, man, I just don't know what direction that would go in for us.
Yeah, I'll be in Dallas with you next week, or next month rather, for the AFDO
Yeah,
conference. I'm looking forward to talking to you some more there. But hopefully, maybe we can make some traction with. I know I'm going to come off of this call, and I'm going to actually try to talk to a couple people in the APT and see if we can't try to
awesome.
get something organized. I don't know. I think it's a long process to actually get to a starting point with that, but I think
Well,
you're right.
there'll probably be some APT board members there at the AFTO conference, so maybe you and I should take advantage of that and have a sit down with them.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be good. I think. Do you know who's going to be there offhand? Do you have any names?
Mick will probably be there. He's also a board member in AFTO, a chair.
Right, right.
So he'll be there for sure. Well, hopefully, I can't say for sure, but he should be there.
Well, he's probably the first one that we need to start with anyway, so that'd be good.
Yeah, yeah, we could hit him up and see if he's gonna make it.
Yeah, I know I'm willing to put the work into it. You know what I mean? I'm already working a ton. I'd gladly divert some of my solo attention into a unified
Yeah,
program.
the industry could use it, man. I mean, it really can.
Well, yeah, I know, and like you said, I think it's our duty to kind of make sure that we're giving back. And
Yeah, I want tattooing to be safely loved and last for generations.
same,
It
same.
came from generations before us, and and we're finding out now that it's older than anybody could have ever imagined.
It, you,
So there's a big piece of it that just needs the soul tattooing's got to survive, man.
It's funny. I've been recently watching a lot of Vice videos. I was watching a bunch of Ed Hardy videos last week and some Chris Garver videos and just like Ami James and just a lot of guys that been around the industry for a really long time. The Ed Hardy ones were really interesting to me and just it really inspired me. Seeing revitalizing my knowledge of those guys and just kind of the path that they paved
Yeah,
way early on. And just how much pavement they laid for guys like us today. You know what I mean?
yeah, they did.
And it just really made me reevaluate my position in the industry today and the power, quote unquote, power that I have in the space that I have
Right.
with the platform that I have. And what do I want to do with that? You know what I mean? What do I want to be remembered for in this industry? You know what I mean? Do I simply want to be remembered as the guy that created a stencil primer and a few products that are not that much different and not that much unique in
Right.
in separation in regards to everything else that's out there? Or do I want to be remembered as a guy that really helped elevate and pioneer the next evolution of this craft? You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
feel I feel like I truly want to be the latter. I want to be that.
Yeah. What legacy do you want to leave behind? For the
Somebody's got to
generation
continue
coming.
laying the pavement. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what's the foundation for the next generation? And somebody's got to come in after us and pick that up. You know what I mean?
100%. We need
So,
to, and we're in a whole different kind of era, aren't we? Like we gotta look at it a little bit different than some of the guys that came before us, and luckily we had guys like Tramp and Mario kind of lay that pavement for us to kind of pick up and keep pushing.
yeah, I mean, it meant a lot when Tramp called me up and invited me to the CTS. I was like, man,
Yeah.
that's crazy. You want me there? Like, what? you know, and for him to have that, um, I don't know. I've just always had this crazy high level of respect for Tramp. You know what I mean? Like he's just
Yeah.
been this guy that I've always looked up to and admired the way he built his business and just what he's done. And I still talk to him. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
just you know, to be able to pick up the phone and call a guy like that and have him answer the phone when you call is just it means something. You know what I mean? And
Yeah. Yeah.
it
That's one
really
thing about
truly
him.
does.
He always tries to pick up, you know?
Oh, he always tells me, he's like, I answer the phone when it rings because, you know,
Yeah. 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 He
I'm
doesn't
like,
like
I
to let,
don't because it's
he doesn't
freaking
like to let stuff
telemarketers
linger.
market
Trust me.
time nowadays.
Yeah.
But, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but I do want to be that resource for younger generation artists. You know what I mean? I want to be that educational point and no, no self agenda. You know, like I'm not doing it for self gain.
No.
I'm doing it to protect the craft and ensure that we're going to be here
No,
for
I'm a firm
years to
believer that
come.
everybody in some shape or form in their life needs to try to give back to the community, right? And for me, that's kind of how it started. Like passionate about it, obviously, you know, and it came from what can I give back and what can I give to the generations coming, you know, and that's how it all started. And then I found out that it could be really effective, you know, and especially talking to the congressman, like that's,
Yeah.
dude, I got to tell you, Rob, they love talking to us. Like
Do they?
dude. Every time I walk into one of their offices, like it's the weirdest thing. Like staff members and them start showing their tattoos. Check this out.
Oh,
Like,
really?
you know, I
Dude,
walk to a congressman's office. He starts taking his shirt off. I'm like, whoa. Like we just met, dog. You know, and he's like, no, I got to show you my back piece. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be like that, you know. And even the ones that don't have tattoos are super interested because they're like, oh man, these tattoo people are coming in my office. Don't know what to expect, you know.
well, that's refreshing because I've always had this stereotypical feeling that it's completely the opposite of that. Like you're going to walk in this room and be
Yeah.
like, this black cloud just came into this stuffy room, and you're like, I
No,
got eyes
we've
on you,
had
and
some
you're just
we've
this
had some
awkward
big.
guy covered in tattoos.
Yeah, no, we've had some big proponents in Congress. We had one Congress member that his son was an apprentice in LA when we
Oh,
brought him,
really?
and he actually got pretty emotional and pissed off about what was happening. And from that conversation, he during a testimony the FDA was giving, he tore them up over MoCRA, like tore them in pieces, dude. And it was probably the most gratifying thing to watch. I watched it on TV when he tore them, and I was like, yes, yeah, because now he understands they're coming after us for no reason. And he's the one he stopped me halfway through my speech and said, "Is there a health crisis?" I was like, "Nope." He goes, "Then what the hell are we doing here?" And I said, "That was my question for you." You know, and so we've had some tremendous support. We have congressmen willing to put together a caucus for us, and so we got to have a team of congressmen talking about just what we need as an industry, you know, and it's great when you walk into some of these meetings and committee meetings, and some of those people actually got tattooed by, you know, with your product and
Right.
tattooed in your shops.
Yeah.
So, and they're like, oh shit, like I got tattooed at Eternal back in the day. Oh really? Let me see it. You know, who
Yeah.
tattooed you? Oh, I know him. You know, and then all of a sudden you have that personal connection, and next thing you know, they want to be having lunch with you and shit. So it's refreshing to do that, to go on the hill. Now have been some that are kind of very skeptical of us, you know, but by the end of the conversation, we're shaking hands, taking pictures, and you know, telling them how many constituents they're going to hear from. so,
Yeah.
so it'd be
Well,
great to have more of us up there.
well, that's exciting, and I definitely want to be there with you. You know, I want to start getting in the trenches with you some
Yeah.
and helping you out because I don't think you should be shouldering that all by yourself. And hats off to
No.
you for continuing the battle despite all the setbacks. I mean,
Yeah.
seriously, it's
Yeah, and I appreciate you being so active. And
yeah. Well, I'm
yeah,
just
having
trying to
a
follow in
drive.
your footsteps, man. You're the
Oh
one that
no,
really inspired me.
side by
No,
side,
truly, you did. You
side by
inspired
side.
me, man, to stay active
I
because
appreciate
you know, I was trying. I really did want CTS to be successful. I thought that
that.
was
Me
a
too.
great thing when they formed that, and like I said, I felt honored to be invited to that and be a part of that. You know, and I was kind of sad when it didn't work out. You know what I mean? Because it felt like there was a lot of heart and soul going into that, and
Yeah.
it really was a passion project. So I'm glad that you stayed in the trenches and keep fighting the fight because it did inspire me to keep in the trenches and fight the fight too. And
Good.
you know, we're two guys. You know, how many more can we get behind us? And I know I have enough influence with other manufacturers that I'm close to be able to pull some people into the fold and get some people aligned, and I know you do too. So I really
Yeah.
think we can be actionable, and we can have some traction, and we can have measurable results. I think we just got to find a way to get it organized first, and
Right.
then try to roll it out to people after we've got a pretty solid plan. And I don't mind working on any of that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Awesome. Awesome.
I'm more than willing to help do some of that stuff. And I think as more people get involved, the workload becomes lighter, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I think we definitely need to sit down in Dallas and let's, just have a face to face and a talk and see if we can get some of the APT people involved in that discussion and kind of just see where we could go from there.
Yeah, I think it all starts with awareness, which is the point of this podcast and this conversation, is to get people aware of what's going on, get people talking about it and interested, and get some links out there.
Yeah.
Are there any websites that you would encourage, artists specifically that are interested in learning more about this stuff to go
No,
visit?
I just push everyone towards ABT and AFTO at this point.
Okay.
You know, depending on how our talks go in Dallas, there should be a website for sure. We should have some kind of education out there. The one thing that I've always told everyone, told Ben this, told everybody, like, we got to stay away from the fear mongering. The media is doing enough of that, right? And it causes artists to just kind of put their head in the sand and
Right.
ignore what's going on. We need people to be active, and we have the upper hand. We're the industry experts. We just need to figure out how to unify and have our voice heard.
Sure.
It's nothing to be scared of. The lawmakers, if they know that we're regulating ourselves, it's going to be a lot better for us in the end, right?
Right.
And we just got to prove that to them. Is really what it is. Again, we're victims of our own success, which is a good thing. We're seeing tattooing just going through this boom, of success, and we need to take it all in at the same time, not just the success. It's going to come with challenges. It always does. As any of us that have been successful in anything, especially business, know that it comes with challenges. So I would say, first step is for us to sit down and get unified. Then yeah, let's lead them all. Tattoo artists need to get involved. They need to ask questions. They need to be part of this process.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to come to Dallas with a blueprint. I'm going to try to put a blueprint together, and something that we can kind of chew on over a meal or whatever, and just sit down and look at and say, how do you feel like this looks, and at least maybe get a starting point, and then talk to the APT about it and see what we can do, because I think the APT is the right place for that, probably. And I always include the links to the APT website in all the comment sections of my podcast. So always encourage artists to go check out the APT and become a member of the APT.
They've grown, haven't they? In the last 2 years, I've seen so many changes. It's gone from this kind of, I'm just going to be honest, I might get in trouble for saying this from them, but kind of outdated group, bunch of us old guys, to really newly refreshed. I really like where they're heading with it.
And I think there's a lot of younger people getting involved now too, which is a great thing. We need the younger generation of artists coming in to be part of the group and have a say. And it's relatively inexpensive to be a member of the APT. It's and they're constantly trying to add benefits for their members. Like right now, I've been putting a lot of effort into trying to figure out how the APT can get group insurance benefits for its members, for liability insurance, health insurance.
Huge.
Yeah, because we're missing that, we're
and
trying to cover all kinds of things in the APT.
Yeah, those are the cool things when you have a trade organization that you could actually do,
Right.
The numbers, purchase power. I mean, it's right there.
Yeah. So the more members we have, the better off, and the better buying power we have, and lobbying power we have, and position power that we have, as we can show that we're a unified trade organization. So I fully
the other part of it too, it's we got to be conscious of the state level too. States are constantly making laws also.
Right.
And so by the APT doing what they're doing, it's also organized into where we could actually help contribute to state level challenges as well, right? And help battle those for the artist. So that really needs to be, we need to pay close attention on that, because again, that snowball effect, what's happening in Europe, starting to happen in the US, right? What's happening at the federal level is going to trickle down to the state level. So it's super important that people get active in the APT and groups like that, so we could also combat that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. Yeah. So anybody listening, I would encourage you, if you're an artist that really cares about the industry and not just the money you're putting in your pocket, that you should definitely become a member of the APT and get in tune with what they're doing.
Great.
Whether you choose to be an active part of it or if you just choose to be a member just to support the organization, I think you should do that.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, hey man, I really appreciate you taking time with me today and talking about some of these super important things and helping to educate the industry and the artists in the industry and manufacturers, and really look forward to working with you in the future and continuing to have these good conversations together and seeing how far we can move the needle.
Yeah, likewise, Rob. I appreciate you having me on here, and don't pay for those consultants anymore, man.
I won't. Hopefully we'll be able to get this thing off the ground, and we'll be our own group of consultants, and we can help each other out when we have questions.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I mean, I'm an open book. Like I want to help the industry, so anybody needs help, I'm easily reachable. So I appreciate all the effort you put out there, Rob. It helps keep me on my toes too, so it's good.
Yeah, man. I appreciate that we have an open door policy with one another, and we have that trust between us to where we can have that open, honest conversations with each other about our businesses. And that's why I wanted to start the conversation out on the Nexus thing, because I feel like I'm an artist-owned company independently. You're part of a larger conglomerate of artist-owned companies under, I hate using that word corporation, but
Oh, I mean, it is what it is, right? So
yeah, I mean, we
just gotta get the stigma kind of away from some of that. And
yeah, that's what I kind of wanted to do, is kind of dispel some of the fear around that, and display the fact that we're still out here working together for the greater good. You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
So that's important.
Absolutely. We're still steering the ship,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
We're still steering that ship. So there's lots of companies out there, and
we're still pirates at heart, man.
Always. Trust me.
So, I mean, I got it, bro. It's like, it says it right here, pirates life for me, bro.
I don't think HR even likes to have my name spoken in the hallways, man. So I'm as far away from that corporate lifestyle as I can be. So
yeah, I'm just trying to be a compliant pirate these days.
Yeah, just different type of pirate. There's plenty of pirates that work for the government a little bit.
So. Yeah, for sure. I mean, pirates had an option to become legal at one point in time, and if they chose to be legal, they got to keep sailing their ships and doing what they wanted to do. They just had to do it under the government's rules.
Yeah, and sometimes you get to write the rules, that's the best part, right? So, but we got to do it as a group.
Well, I appreciate you, man. We're at the 2-hour mark here, so I don't want to keep you any longer. I know we both got busy schedules, so I'll let you get back to your thing.
Appreciate you too.
I'll see you in Dallas next year or next month.
Next month, yeah. Just about a month away. So appreciate you, brother. You have a good one, right? Thanks. Yep. Take care. Bye.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Business of Tattooing. I appreciate you tuning in and being part of this journey to level up the industry one conversation at a time. If you found value in today's episode, do me a favor. Subscribe, leave a review, and share it with another artist who could use this knowledge. Got questions or topics you want me to cover? Hit me up on Instagram at NoFlashNinja or email me at rob@electrumsupply.com. And remember, tattooing is an art, but running a successful business is a skill. Keep pushing, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time on The Business of Tattooing.